Welcome to Wellywood Wargaming, where the grim dark never sleeps. Crack open a bottle of wild snake and spark up a low stick as we take a journey down Underhive.
Greetings, we're back with another Necromunda Top 10. This time it is Universal Tactics cards we're going to be talking about. I'll be giving you my top 10 of the Universal Tactics cards, which are available to every single gang in Necromunda. Now, there are an absolute ton of Tactics cards in Necromunda so far, and the list just keeps on growing with every new release. However, we're going to be talking about just the universal ones, including everything from White Dwarf magazine to each individual deck of cards as well. This is a list of my favorite top 10 tactics cards. They're not necessarily the most OP or the most broken or the bestest. I'm just going with the 10 that I like using the most. Now, this was really hard to do. It was very hard to do with the weapons as well, but I'd say it's even harder to do with tactics cards, because I would say generally there's at least probably 25 to 30 very good universal tactics cards that I would use. So I had to omit some of the more boring or dull ones, even if they might be better. So there is no click in here. There is no lucky find in here. They're both good cards, but they're just a bit boring and a bit dull and a bit predictable. So if someone's bringing click or lucky find to the table in a game, I'm generally a bit like, of course you are. So these are some more interesting and slightly more tactical tactics cards that you can use here in your games for every single gang. You don't have to run specifically Goliath tactics cards. You don't have to run specifically Cawdor tactics cards. These are universal and available to everybody. So let's get into it. In at number 10, the first one is Group Tactics. So what we have here is play this gang tactic instead of activating a model. Instead, activate up to 3 friendly fighters in turn. Now, this doesn't specify where the fighters are. It is not a group activation in that they don't have to be clustered together. So this is a very powerful card at the right time. Of course, you don't want to just use this willy-nilly and get out activated later that turn by a gang that still has loads of activations to do. But if you've got 3 fighters across the board in different locations that you all want to operate at the same time, this is clutch and can win you a game in a single turn. So that is why I've included it in my top 10. In at number 9, we have Service Tunnels. Now, I've included Service Tunnels because of its unique ability to give gangs without infiltrate. So, what this card does, play when deploying your gang, 1 fighter chosen by you from your starting crew gains the infiltrate skill for the duration of the battle and may be deployed accordingly. Now, on some gangs, this is just not that exciting at all. Of course, if you get access to cunning skills, then you will have access to infiltrate and you will have it where you need it. So if you're playing Delac, you're not going to use this card unless you want extra infiltrators, I suppose. But this card is for Ogryns, it is for corpse grinders, it is for close combat gangs or snipers with heavy weapons and stuff that you want to get into the right position early on in a game. I'd actually say this is quite good for squats as well, particularly if you want those melter guns and stuff up close and personal early on in the game. Service Tunnels is a fantastic card. Yes, it's a little bit boring and it's a little bit cheesy, but it is really good for those gangs that don't benefit from cunning skills. In at number 8, we have one called Quick Time. Now, it reads as follows. Play this card when activating a fighter. Tuck this card under the fighter's card. When it is there, the fighter's move is increased by 2. In each end phase, roll a d6. On a 1, the card is discarded. It's pretty hard to shift this card unless you're really unlucky, but giving any fighter +2 movement is fantastic on a Van Saar, on a squat, on a Goliath, or a close combat fighter that you really want to get in there. Suddenly, you go from a lousy movement 4 to a movement 6, and that is all the difference if you want to get across the board and get up in people's faces. It's also really good if you just want to run away from those close combat gangs as well. If those corpse grinders are coming at you and you're playing Van Saar and you need to make a hasty retreat, having +2 movement on your Van Saar is also really good. You could also give this fighter to an already fast fighter to make them even faster. So imagine your Van Saar, Neotechs on their surfboards flying around with +2 movement. It's pretty nice. Give it to an Orlok Wrecker, something like that. I really like this card, and the fact that there's a downside, obviously, if you roll that 1, you lose it. That's absolutely fine. It's a decent trade-off, and you might go for the whole game without rolling that 1. So a fantastic card that I'd use early on in a scenario as well. In at number 7, we have Rejuve Stim. This one is particularly good. So play this card instead of activating a fighter. Choose any friendly fighter who has suffered at least 1 wound. The fighter immediately regains any lost wounds. So it's really important to differentiate this. There is another rapid healing, I believe, tactics card, which gives you back a wound or a flesh wound, off the top of my head. This one is worded slightly differently in that you get back any lost wounds. So if you've got an Orlok leader who's got 3 wounds and he's injured and wounded and stuff, suddenly he's back to full health. And that is why I've included Rejuve Stim in my top 10 here. The next one is a real favorite of mine, and it is Hard Stop. This card is just awesome. It's quite situational, and it relies on you being charged by an enemy opponent. It reads like this. Play when one of your fighters becomes engaged as part of an enemy charge double action. Your fighter may immediately make a free fight basic action, interrupting the opposing fighter's activation. It's so much fun seeing a Death Maiden charge you. You pull out this card and you've got a web gauntlet or something particularly nasty, and you take them out in one shot. Of course, it is situational, and generally speaking, you know, when someone's charging a real close combat powerhouse into stuff, they usually go for softer targets anyway. But if your softer target happens to have a nasty weapon on them, then heaven forbid Hard Stop is a really, really nice one to use. It is an Uno reverse card, and it's really fun to use in Necromunda scenarios. In at number 5 now, we have one called Crossfire, and it reads as follows. Play this card when a fighter makes a ranged attack against a target who has already been shot at by a friendly fighter. The hit roll succeeds automatically. So you really have to look at the wording on these, because it does say, the way that it's worded anyway, it says that you don't have to hit the target with the first shot. It just means shot at. So you could shoot at someone with a hive scum with a reclaimed auto pistol or something, miss them, and then immediately use Crossfire and hit them with your las cannon automatically. So that's why this card is good, is because you get an auto hit roll with any weapon that you've got. And if you're using weapons like melter guns, plasma guns, or really high powered weapons, someone's in cover, suddenly you auto hit with that weapon, and that is very scary indeed. And that's why I had to include this one in my top 5. Number 4 is a bit of a dull one, if I'm honest, but I had to include it in here, and it is Seize the Initiative. It does exactly what it says on the tin. Play this card at the beginning of any round before rolling for priority. You immediately take priority this turn without any dice being rolled. So again, this is tactically incredibly sound. You might want to keep onto this for a game when you really, really, really need initiative. So many times I've been playing Necromunda and I've wanted the initiative and haven't had it. If you can sometimes just gain the upper hand in those last few turns, it can turn the tide of a battle, and you can win a battle off the back of just initiative alone. And that is why this card is so important and why I put it in this top 10. We're into the top 3 now, and this is absolutely one of my favorites. It's very thematic and fluffy, but it doesn't really suit some gangs. Although it's a universal card, I would say, go with the stuff that matches your gang's sort of theme and fluff, because this one is like, it's a bit of a weird one. See what I did there? Pun intended. But this one is Unnerving Whispers. So play this card instead of activating a fighter. An enemy fighter of your choice must pass a willpower check at -2 or become subject to the Insanity condition. Very nasty. Place an Insanity marker on the fighter and immediately roll a d6 on the Insanity table. So that is pretty crucial. Insanity is a horrific condition to come under. It's a 1 in 3 just to act normal. It's a 1 in 3 for you to activate your opponent's fighter. And it's just, it's really, really good. Unnerving Whispers, again, it's quite situational. It is a powerful card, but the fact that you have to roll that willpower check does take some of the edge away from it. Of course, you're going to be using this on Ogryns, Goliaths, and other gangs that don't have very high willpower stats. This card is no good on Delac or Vansar or anything that has really high willpower, squats perhaps. You're definitely going to want to aim this one at those close combat beasts like your Goliaths and Corpse Grinders that do typically have lower willpower. So it's a really good card. It's really funny sending an enemy leader insane and watching them just shoot their own guys and stuff. So absolutely, it's got to be done, and it had to go into this top 10 here. Unnerving Whispers. In at number 2, we have Adrenaline Surge. Oh gosh, how good is this card? Play this gang tactic when activating a friendly fighter. The fighter may perform an additional action, this activation. The reason why this card, there are actually quite a few similar cards to this, by the way. Ones that will give you an extra fight action, ones that will give you an extra simple move action. This one doesn't specify what the action has to be, which is why this is the best version of this card. A fighter may perform an additional action. So this really is up to you how you do it. You could move, you could move, charge. You could move, shoot, shoot. You could shoot, move, shoot. Something like that. So it gives you an extra activation. There's a lot of tactical possibility and range and scope with this one, and that's why Adrenaline Surge is pretty much an absolute go-to in everybody's tactics card deck. To be honest, in most campaigns I see Adrenaline Surge being used a lot. It's a real clutch card, and it can be used in so many different ways to get you out of messes, but also get you into people's faces and stuff as well. It's a really, really good card, and it has to go in there near the top of this list. Are you ready for number 1 now, though? Again, I reiterate, this is my personal top 10 here. These are all cards that I've used quite a lot in campaigns and had lots of success with. I'm sure there are better cards out there, but my number 1 spot is reserved for my favorite tactics card in the whole of Necromunda, and that is, of course, Bait and Switch. This card is so good and so fun to use. I love seeing people's faces when I use it. It reads as follows. Play this card instead of activating a fighter. Take a ready marker from any of your fighters and place it on a fighter who has already activated this round. When you read it at first, it doesn't sort of strike you as being particularly powerful, but what you're doing here is you're activating twice with a fighter, just like you would with Overseer or something, except you can pick the time that you do it, and it makes it far more powerful as a card. What I tend to do with this one is charge into combat with a close combat fighter, for example, kill somebody, stand there like, you know, not really knowing what to do with your next activation, then immediately take an activation marker off someone who's actually seriously injured and not even in the game, and give it back to my fighter that already charged, and then do the whole thing again. There are so many different ways that you can do this, and you can take, you know, particularly if you play outcasts or sort of cheap chaffy gangs with lots of useless guys in there, if you've got a guy on the floor and all he can do is crawl, take away his activation marker and give it to someone more important. I absolutely love the sort of tactical element of using Bait and Switch. It is my absolute favorite card, and I love it to pieces. So anyway, what do you think of this top 10? Have you used all these cards? If you haven't, maybe would you consider using these cards? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll be back with another video real soon. Peace out.